You can start, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today we have a lecture series by Dr. Gokul Shankar, Professor, Microbiology Department, Deputy Dean, Preclinical Sciences, Faculty of Medicine, Manipal University College, Malaysia. I would like to brief about Dr. Gokul Shankar. Dr. Gokul received Young Scientist Award in recognition of outstanding contribution in the field of medicinal plants. He received SAB Award of Excellence. He received Alumni Achiever Award, received 2016 Award of Excellence in Food Microbiology. He also received the Best Teacher Award in 2019 from Microbiology Society of India. He was the principal investigator for FRGS Grant 2019 to 21 Malaysia. He was the columnist and writer of many reputed scientific articles for newspapers. To his credits, he was a course coordinator for many academic institutes. He served as a deputy dean. He was the research supervisor and coordinator for many academic institutes. On behalf of MBSI, I cordially invite Dr. Gokul Shankar to deliver the lecture. Gokul sir, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Can I share my screen now?
Yes, yes. Audience, if you have any questions at the end of the lecture, you can put your questions either in chat box or raise your hand so that we would like to clear your doubts. Have a good day. Thank you.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, Dr. Gokul. You can.
Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone. In India, it's afternoon here in Malaysia. So nice to catch up on a Sunday morning. Thanks to Dr. Ushastri for organizing this, and special thanks to Prof. Deshmukh. He has been supportive in all our activities of MBSI always. Okay. This topic, as it reads, an itch in time saves nine. So the normal prob is stitch in time. So why is it itch? We'll talk about it because, yeah, as you know, like dermatophytosis is a disease which is going to cause itch. So that's it. And why is this lecture special, or any lecture on fungi special? Is like, basically we need to understand there is 1.5 million fungal species that exist in the universe, but only 150 to 300 species are known to be pathogenic to human beings. So basically, if you appreciate, if you ask the question of why, it's because of the difference in the temperature. As you know, like most of these fungi which exist in the environment, they prefer a temperature of 25 degrees, but the human body temperature is 37 degrees, which is actually the temperature restriction, which is keeping all these environmental fungi from affecting the human beings. But there is no restriction for certain fungi, like the dimorphic fungi. Dimorphic fungi can exist in two forms, both in the mold form and the yeast form, and they can thrive at both temperature at 37 and 25 degrees. And also there is no restriction for the yeast, because yeast prefer a temperature of 37, which is the human body temperature. But Sadly, this situation is changing over the time because of the global warming, and because of this, fungi um, has the ability to adapt to higher temperature. So, which means like newer fungi will come into the emergence of causing diseases. Dermatophytosis is one such fungi which prefers to grow at 25 degrees, and but it also causes human infection, and we'll talk about it um, in the next 40 minutes. Okay, so dermatophytosis, the other name, which is also called the ringworm infections, and or the tinea infections. But the word tinea or ringworm is actually a misnomer. The reason being, it's not caused by worms. Those days, it was believed that the dermatophytosis was caused by parasites. So that's why they were called as ringworm infections or tinea infections. But today we know that these are fungal infections, and because of the ring-like patterns they create, cause these lesions. So they are called the ringworms, but it's a misnomer. But owing to the popularity of the term, it's still being used in the medical textbooks all over the world. And all of us have some preference to food, like we like to eat pizza, or we like to eat um, what our favorite food being in South India, like you like dosa and so on. Like fungi, dermatophytosis, they prefer to feed on keratin, and then um, as they feast on keratin, and you know what makes up what are the layers in your body that is made of keratin. It's basically the skin, nail, and the hair. So literally, these fungi can uh, eat you. And we always have a famous saying where we say sharing is caring. But as far as dermatophytosis is concerned, sharing is not caring, because by sharing your towels or hairbrushes, you may get a fungal infection. So if you are sure that you don't want to pick up a fungal friendship, then better be aware that sharing is not caring for dermatophytosis. Okay, and then you also have today's fashion is what, wearing tight fitting clothes, like jeans, jeggings, and so on. So what actually is, it can be a faux pas, it can be an error if you are talking about dermatophytosis, because a hot and humid climate like that of India does not prefer you to wear tight fitting clothes. Loose, breathable fabrics are the best, basically the cotton cloths. So if you want to be right away from dermatophytosis, watch out on that. Okay, now dermatophytosis as such, it's also called the Great Indian Epidemic. The term was, this phrase was coined by Verma in 2017. The reason is, like, when we were talking about, all of us know what is an epidemic, pandemic, and all that. But why you call a dermatophyte an epidemic? Though the fatality of this disease is not there, but this disease has been there for hundreds of years, and maybe it was there even in our previous years. But with the documented literature, we know that they have survived for more than hundreds of years. So it's a sort of an epidemic which has been there always in India, or you can call that as an hyper endemic as well. So that is something we need to be aware of, because everyone in a climate like India is capable of picking up this dermatophyte infection. So unless you know more about this infection, it's going to infect each one of us. Right. So what is the status currently is like in India, there is an increased number of dermatophytosis cases in the last 10 to 12 years. The reason being like there is multiple reasons. In addition, there is also a shift uh, which says like there is a, like dermatophytosis is caused by three groups of three genus of dermatophytes, basically the Trichophyton, Epidermophyton, and Microsporum. But there is a shift in the organisms that cause, because till 2015 or 16, we were thinking that Trichophyton rubrum is the predominant dermatophyte that was causing human infection. So I just quoted that one of our papers there, which was done in 2008, which also reported that Trichophyton rubrum is one of the predominant agent of dermatophytosis in India. But after 2015, there is a difference in the trend where we find that Trichophyton mentacrophytes is the primary pathogen in the recent years. So this is again a glimpse of what I said based on the studies. So it says, like, say, if you can see that the blue part is the Trichophyton infections and the red one is the Metagrophytes infection. So you can see that there is a gradual increase in the Metagrophytes infection, and especially after 2016 to the current years, you will see that the Trichophyton Metagrophytes have emerged out as a major key agent of dermatophytosis. And what is also interesting is, like, two states, Tamil Nadu in South India and Delhi in North India, has accounted for the majority of the dermatophyte infections, maybe 2/5 of the total positive cases in India. So that's something alarming for these two states to take note, and also for other states to be aware of. Right. So we in India, like, we are always proud of things which are made in India. But what we need to understand that we cannot be proud when we talk about infections that's going to be from India. Say, for example, the rRNA studies based on phylogenetic analysis, they have grouped a particular group genotype of T mentagrophytes, which is genotype 8, which has got a unique geographical identity, which means, like, they are in India and they are spreading very rapidly. There is a epidemic status of these dermatophytosis based also on, I told you there are different reasons for the infection being an epidemic in India. One such reason is, like, the steroid modified tinea in India. So which means, like, steroid being used in the treatment of these infections could also be responsible for this epidemic status. And then what is a matter of concern is the increase in the terbinafine resistant T. rubrum strains. And also we need to remember the irrational fixed drug combinations which are currently available in the market in India, where a cream can contain an antibacterial, an antiviral, antibacterial and an antifungal, and a steroid in combination, or two to five molecules coupled in a product. So that's not something which is a rational drug combination, because, see, if you are addressing an antifungal agent, you need an antifungal, you need an antibacterial if you're going to address a bacterial infection. But why do you need a combination of all these ingredients in the particular product? So that's also going to give rise to more infections in future, which you will know, like, basically they are going to the irrational use of antibiotics or antimicrobials is going to allow the resistance development in these.
Some part went unheard because your mic was off, I think, or something happened. Just the last 1 minute. Just the last 1 minute.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Currently, it is fine.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was just telling that because of the irrational drug combination uses which is practiced in India, where a combination of an antifungal and antibacterial and sometimes a steroid in a topical cream could also pave way for resistance in these dermatophyte infections. So talking of fungal infection, there is always an alert across, like this is a report from PGI Chandigarh, where it says, like, the fungal infections are on the rise, which also includes the dermatophytosis. and then you always have thoughts all over the world that you need to think of mycology, because we always talk about viruses, we always talk about bacteria, which are the pathogenic bacteria, but we always ignore what? The fungi. So emerging infections, filamentous fungi can be just a tip of an iceberg, and it also, this particular editorial says, stop neglecting fungi. Okay, so to avoid these infections, let's take a brief overview of what these infections are. Um, Basically, before going into dermatophytosis, we need to understand that these are superficial infections. Mycosis, it's a term which uses for fungal infections. Mycosis denotes fungal infections. So the dermatophytosis is part of the fungal infections. So what is basically affected is the cutaneous layers of the skin, hair, and the nails. They do not invade the deeper tissue. Right. But there are a lot of superficial mycotic infections available, but the most predominant ones being the dermatophytosis. And also you have the pityriasis versicolor, which is caused by Malassezia group, which is also the causative agent of dandruff. So this is the picture of pityriasis versicolor, where you get the discrete hypopigmented patches on the skin. It can be either hyperpigmented or hypopigmented depending on the skin nature. So this is caused by fungi. So this is one of the common tropical fungal infections, and this is the same organism which also causes dandruff. So what we need to understand is like this particular organism which causes dandruff is Malassezia group, and this group actually is a commensal flora which is there on your scalp. So which means like Malassezia species is in the commensal flora, and then it is there in the scalp of every individual. Then why it causes dandruff only on few people is a $1,000,000 question. It is due to several factors, including the host factors. So what you need to understand is like, if you have dandruff, you need to understand that though dandruff is more an embarrassing condition where it's more of a cosmetic importance, or it has got a cosmetic significance. So what we need to understand that dandruff can be effectively managed but not controlled, because it's caused by a commensal flora. So what is the best way is like use shampoos which contain zinc pyrethrone or selenium or clombazole, which has to be used frequently. So how do we make this statement? This is one of our articles published long back. So where we say like shampoos are no cure for dandruff because they can only effectively manage dandruff. The reason I told you, it's caused by the Malassezia group of fungi, which are normal flora of the skin. So which means like if you have a dandruff, you use anti-dandruff shampoo twice in a week, then your dandruff resolves. But when you stop using it in a couple of weeks, again your dandruff comes in because it's caused by the normal flora. The normal flora will tend to grow again. So there is effective management, but not a cure, as what the advertisements claim in the market, that we have a miracle cure for dandruff. That's not true. Okay, so we'll come to the main agenda of the talk, the dermatophytosis. That's the next predominant fungal infection all over the world, also in India. So these infections are also called as ringworms, tinea infections that we discussed already, and then they are caused by a group of organisms which are called the dermatophytes, which have the ability to utilize the keratin. That's the layer they are infecting, the reason for infecting the skin, hair, and the nails. Okay, so what is so interesting about this group of fungi, dermatophytes, is like among the fungi, if you take, this is only unique to dermatophytes that they have a distinct geographical distribution, or they have a ability to thrive in different environmental niches, being like they can live in the soil, they are called as zoophilic. They can live on animals, they are called zoophilic. and they can also exclusively live on human beings causing an infection. They are anthropophilic. So no other fungi has got such a wide distribution of either existing in zoophilic form, zoophilic form, and anthropophilic form. So in the course of evolution, like we need to note that these dermatophytes would have thrived only in the soil initially as zoophilic, and in the course of evolution, they would have adapted themselves to become inhabitants of animals because um, uh, usually they would have come into the burrowing animals like the rodents and all into their fur, and basically because they live on the keratin, so they would have come into the fur of these burrowing animals, and from them they would have gradually evolutionized to become human parasites as well. So we discussed that there are 3 genera which are responsible for causing dermatophytosis, like they are the microsporum, trichophyton, and epidermophyton. There are a lot of species among microsporum and trichophyton species, but there is just one significant species, which is epidermophyton flocculum, which causes human infection. Right. So now what we need to understand is, like, though we were telling that these fungi can infect the hair, skin, and the nails, there is something which is unique to trichophyton, that it infects all the 3, hair, skin, and nails, whereas microsporum infects only the skin and the hair, and epidermophyton only the skin and the nails. So this is something which is a unique feature which is observed among the dermatophytes. Now, I told you that there are zoophilic dermatophytes which live on the animals, and they are zoophilic dermatophytes which live on the soil. They can also cause human infections. So whenever they cause these human infections, these infections are more severe when compared to the infections which are caused by the anthropophilic species, which is existing on the human skin, which means like they can cause infection on the human skin. So if you try to guess, it's also part of the interesting evolution, because anthropophilic species cannot live on soil, they cannot live on animals, they have a complete dependency to live only on human hosts. So if they cause severe infections, then what happens is, like, they will be eliminated, in the sense either it has to be eliminated by our immune system, or we will be taking a treatment, and gradually the organism will get eliminated. So they cause mild infections, chronic infections, okay, in human beings. But whereas the zoophilic or the zoophilic group, when they cause human infection, these infections are very severe. Okay. So what about, we were talking about the Indian scenario, but what about the world scenario? Dermatophyte is a fungi which is free for all, which means like it can affect almost any part of your body and any part of the world. So no geographical location is free from dermatophytosis. So it can infect the scalp, nail, groin, feet, and so on. So depending on where these infections occur, we also have a classification of dermatophytosis, which we'll take up. And I told you, like, from animals you may get the infection. So what you need to remember, like when I talk about animals, it can be your pet animals like cats and dogs. So next time if you see your fluffy, which can be a cat or a dog, if it is itching, it keeps on itching, then you need to get them checked out, just to make sure that you don't get the infection, or you may have to start scratching too. So that's where I put the title of this talk as itch in time. Okay, so what is why we have to talk about dermatophytosis so much, with so much of importance in India, is like, like India has got a hot and humid climate, which is more suitable for most of the fungal infections, including dermatophytosis. And then there can be other predisposing host factors which can also promote dermatophyte infections. It can be diabetes, prolonged steroid treatment, or immunosuppression, or immunocompromisation. It can be even inborn allergics, allergic conditions like atopy. So how these infections occur is like they usually are well-defined pruritic meaning itchy lesions, okay, and they are usually circular lesions. That's why they are called as ringworms. So now, based on the anatomical location, where you find these infection, okay, so they are divided into different types. Tinea is a basic name for dermatophyte infections, and then it occurs in the head or the scalp. Then it is called tinea captis. All over the body, it is tinea corporis. It is tinea crudis when it is in the groin, tinea anguem when it is on the nails, tinea barbae when it's on the beard, okay, and tinea pedis when it is a infection of the foot. So we'll see some of these infections in detail for us to understand. Right. So this is tinea corporis, which is the infection of the smooth skin all over the body. So we were talking about well-defined lesions. You know, well-defined is like because their margins are raised. That's why it's called a well-defined margin infections. So why we need to understand that is like anybody in India, everybody in a lifetime, at least 90% people have a tendency to pick up one dermatophyte infection in their lifetime. Unless you understand what is a dermatophyte infection, then you will not be able to go in for a proper treatment or management. So this is again tinea corporis, which is the infection all over the body. Right. Tinea pedis is an infection of the foot and also the intertrigenial region of the toes. So usually there is a popular saying which says like you should not judge another person. You should be in their shoes to judge them. So, but before making sure that you go into their shoes, make sure that they don't have a athlete's foot. Athlete's foot is other popular name for the tinea pedis infection. So why it's called athlete's foot? Those days, athletes were using the shoes more frequently. Okay, so occlusion and sweating is major reasons. I told you hot and humid climate is responsible for dermatophyte infection. So which means like sweating, profuse sweating, and then occlusion causes these infections. So athletes were using shoes predominantly in the past years. Now no more. Like everybody is using shoes and anybody can get infection. We have adapted so much of the Western culture that we adapted the woolen cloths, we adapted the shoes and all, which are not suitable for Indian conditions. Actually, for a tropical climate like India or be it Malaysia, we don't require shoes. We just require open sandals because we are prone to dermatophyte infection because of the hot weather. Okay, so these are tinea pedis pictures where you can see that intertrigenial region of the toes are infected, and uh, this is quite common observation. Sometimes you may not know that it's a fungal infection. You may think you got a mild itch or something. You may ignore it. Sometimes there can be self-resolving infection. Sometimes it can spread. Right, tinea anguem is an infection of the nails. The nail infections are something which is very deep-seated, and it's very difficult to treat among all the dermatophyte infections. So if you leave the infections untreated, all the nails will get infected. Okay, so that there will be no need to use a nail polish. All your nails get colored, but in a terrible sense. Okay. So that's what I was telling you, that nail infections are the most difficult ones to treat because the fungi go deep into the nail bed and they thrive there. So especially for nail infections, you may not just require a topical antifungal cream, you may also require a oral antifungal treatment. Tinea captis is the infection of the scalp, where severe captis infection can even result in the loss of hair. And you can see that these infections are scaly. Okay, so we were talking about itchy lesions and scaly lesions. And right, this is again a picture of tinea captis. And tinea crudis, also popularly known as jock's itch. It's an infection of the groin, which is the infection of the private parts. This is something more embarrassing, but this is one of the most common infections among dermatophytosis. it's more common in men than women, but the reason could be that reporting may be less because of the embarrassment. But what you need to understand is like tinea infection is just a fungal infection, so there is no need for any embarrassment. So anybody or a person known to you is infected with a dermatophyte infection, then you need to go into a dermatologist, okay, just to get the treatment. Okay, this is again some pictures of tinea crudis. Okay, so we usually make this thing like you will see some people inserting the hands in both the pockets. So it can be for stale, but it can also be they may be suffering from jock itch. The reason is like the scratching cannot be avoided. It's a public embarrassment as well, because as I told you, it's a very itchy lesion. So that's the thing. Yeah, tinea barbae is an infection of the bearded area where small lesions can occur, like for people who grow a beard. Okay, so need to watch out to avoid these infections. And recently, tinea faciae refers to infections of the face, but a new term called the mask tinea has been coined recently because with the advent of the COVID pandemic, then we have been using these masks always 24/7, and then what we end up is getting these lesions which are called as the mask tinea. The reason is what? Again, occlusion, profuse sweating, and also they found that those people who get this mask tinea are the ones who keep on reusing the masks. Okay, so what you need to understand is like the masks are basically disposable masks. If they are used, you cannot use it more than a day. If you have used it more than 8 hours in a day, like you have to discard and go in for a new mask, or you may end up picking up a mask tinea. What is a new danger that is lingering in the Indian scenario is like the terbinafine resistant among these dermatophytes, especially the trachophyton, which was one of the most predominant dermatophyte species. And the resistant to that could be a worrying aspect, because you can see this patient was treated with terbinafine, and because of the resistant, okay, the infection has spread. So you can see both tinea corporis and tinea, or what do you call it, tinea crudis, which is jock itch in this patient. And also, I was talking about one infection can lead to the other infection. This is one a case where a retractable case of dermatophytosis where women first developed a nail infection, okay, and then maybe because of scratching on the other parts of the body, she has picked up infection in other parts of the body, which is tinea unguium, which is a nail infection leading to tinea corporis. Okay, now identification. We were talking about three different genera of dermatophytes causing infection, namely the trachophyton, microsporum, and epidermophyton. So I'm not going to run a lab diagnosis on how you are going to differentiate all this. But basically what you need to understand is like there is no role when it comes to therapy. The identification has no role. Means like whether it's trachophyton or microsporum or epidermophyton, the treatment is the same. So as clinicians, they will not be bothered to know the origin, but microbiologists will appreciate the need of identifying the organism, because you need to know what particular organism is prevalent. You need to know the epidemiology of a dermatophyte infection. Then you need to go in for a identification of the species. Also, because we were talking about the resistant development in dermatophytes. Unless you identify the species, you will not be able to study the resistant development. So if there is a resistant, then you are going to looking for newer antifungals. Then you basically need to identify the organisms. Right. So Okay, how this stitch in time saves 9 is like, first is like, we need to have an awareness about this dermatophyte infection. So we need to identify that when you have a dermatophyte infection, we need to identify that we have an infection. We should appreciate that who are more susceptible for this infection. I told you, like, even diabetic people can be susceptible for more infections. So we need to create such an awareness to avoid what I was telling you about this epidemic or a prolonged prevalence of dermatophytosis in India. So what are the few tips which we can take home from this lecture? Okay, so all of you will remember this ship uh, Titanic. Okay, you know that it sank. It sank because it hit a iceberg. And you know what's an iceberg means? Iceberg is dangerous because you just see the tip of the iceberg. So I'm not talking about the iceberg that hit uh, Titanic. I'm referring to the iceberg, which is the dermatophyte epidemic in India. What we see is just a tip of an iceberg. What can be is a major chunk which is hidden underneath. Okay, so how are we going to avoid this infection? First thing is, like I was telling you about the OTC drugs, which has got the antifungal and the steroid together. Strict avoidance of antifungal preparation, which have steroids in it. Basically, what you need to understand is like steroid will cause immunosuppression. Immunosuppression can proliferate or help to proliferate fungi because they are directly proportional. So steroids, unless it is supervised or recommended by a dermatologist, you cannot take a steroid treatment for the dermatophyte infection. That's something as a rule number one. Then there is a rule of two. What is this rule of two? Is once you get yourself diagnosed with a dermatophyte infection, what you need to remember is like there is a rule which is called the 2-2-2 rule. Okay, what is this 2-2 rule? Is like, first thing is, when you have a dermatophyte infection, when you apply it on the lesion of the dermatophyte, okay, you have to apply twice a day. Okay, that's the first two. And then you have to apply 2 centimeters on the lesion and away from the lesion. So which means like the actively growing fungi will be on the margin of lesion. So it's just not necessary enough that you put the antifungal cream on the lesion, but 2 centimeter just away from the lesion as well. That's the second rule of 2. The third rule is like you have to take a treatment even after your dermatophyte lesion has disappeared. You have to still continue with the treatment for the 2 weeks so that the infection is finally resolved. So that's a rule of the 2. Then I just pointed out that wearing loose cotton garments is more suitable for a climate in India. So whatever the jeans, leggings, jeggings, and all that, no tight fitting clothes are not suitable for the Indian climate. Okay, so now sharing of the towels or bed linen is not recommended. Okay, so if because the spores of the fungi can be there, if a person is infected in the family, he can spread the infection to others. And taking showers regularly, more than taking showers regularly, what is important is like we all take showers, but we don't take this precaution. Is like after you take shower, you have to dry your body sufficiently. Okay, towel dry your body. When your body is fully dry, then you wear your clothes. In a hurry to go to office, to go to the university, or to our workplace, what we do is like we don't have time. We take time to shower, but we don't take time to dry our body. We just start wearing our clothes when our body is still wet. That is going to give a chance for the dermatophytes to grow, because I told you a humid environment is also favorable for the dermatophytes. So if a person is infected, you don't want to pick up the infection, and washing the clothes best, okay, in hot water, and drying in sunlight with a climate like a hot sun in India, that's best to kill all the spores. So that's best. And what is also recommended is like people who have tinea cruris kind of infection, they can use a boxer type of innerwear than the V type of innerwear, because tight fitting, it's always more makes a person more susceptible to dermatophyte infection. And this is something which is an interesting report from the Rutgers University in UK. So what it says, like we all go to the beauty clinic to get our skins beautiful, but it may not be every time that you are just adding the beauty. You may pick up a skin or a fungal infection. From most of the times, it says 50% of the people who visit beauty salons, they pick up a skin infection or a fungal infection from a beauty clinic. So removing even tight waistbands, wristbands, okay, so they can also make you prone for tinea corporis. So you need to keep your pet screened, also rodent control, because rodents can also be a source of infection. So what we final take is, like, what we need to understand that fungi, not just dermatophytosis. There are a lot of fungi in the world which can be a major threat to animals, plants, and human health. What do you need to understand? This is a report which was published in Nature way back into, 2012, which says, like, if there is going to be an extinction of animals, almost 72% and 64% of the plants, the extinctions are going to be because of the fungi. That's something for us to remember. So always don't think bacteriology, don't think virology alone, also think mycology. And then there is this report which was published in Nature in 2013, which says, like, what can happen overnight is like, it can, what can natural disasters like volcano, solar flare, tsunami can kill a lot of people, thousands of people overnight. Similarly, fungal epidemic can also kill a lot of people overnight. That is what our experience tells us when we had the black fungus infection during our COVID pandemic. So better be watchful for these fungal infections. So with that, I just come to the end of this talk. And if you have any queries, I'll be happy to answer.
Audience, if you have any clarification or doubts, please put it in your chat box.
Hello, Gokul sir. This was a really, I am Dr. Prasoon. Yes, this was a very informative lecture today, and I got quite a few new information. Though most of the things are related to fungal infections, so precautionary measures are like avoid humidity and the common things where fungus infect, right? Well, I am curious to know about the specific fungus that you talked about. Do they produce spores? So their infection is also airborne or not?
They produce spores, but they are not basically airborne. You don't get it by inhalation. It's more a fomite transmission. First thing is, like, that's what I was talking about, the spores being in the clothing, in the towel, or it can be in the places where you share, like even if your footwear, if you share, if a person is infected by tinea pedis, you may pick up the infection. So it's more a fomite transmission than infection by a aerosol.
Okay. Okay, great. And nowadays, since people have started in an urban area like apartments and means closed environment where we hardly get sunlight, and also the lifestyle is quite busy. So,
Correct.
like you said, the office timing, no, people are not having enough time to get themselves towel dry, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so will it soon become a lifestyle disease?
It is already becoming a lifestyle disease, because that's why that the authors, Sharma and et al., they coined this term called the Great Indian Epidemic, which they refer to the dermatophytosis. So because the number of cases, what is actually reported is less, but there may be more numbers, and this has been a disease which is prevalent all over India. and they have been increasing in higher proportions as well. So it is going to be a major disease. The only thing is like it's not something which is a fatal disease. So at the most what you're going to get is itchiness and redness of the skin, and it's more a discomfort. But what you need to understand is like if we have a proper awareness among the public on how to avoid this disease, then it's more it's easy to keep the disease in control. And also because of the growing antifungal resistance, if more people get infected, then it's going to be a threat in the medical field for the treatment and management of this condition.
Yeah, so is it so I have few more questions. Just the one was so will it go away after some time, or will it keep on continuing like
Yeah, it can spread
reinfecting the
from
skin?
one place to other place, in the sense like it also depends on your immunity. Like a small lesion can resolve on its own also, but there are tendency that, because I told you, like if it's an anthropophilic fungi, they prefer to be there, so they cause chronic infection which can run over years in your body, especially like tinea pedis and all. It looks like it will be resolving, but you may get the tinea pedis infection after some time, even with the application of an antifungal treatment. That's why a proper treatment regimen is recommended. Usually, the regimen should be for a period of 4 weeks. So usually what we do is like when we get a fungal infection or something, we apply the cream for a couple of days. And then when you feel that the lesion is resolving, then you may stop it. But means like this is not a complete cure, because the spores of the fungi will still remain. So it can cause a reinfection later, and then it can spread to others in the family as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, sir. One last question is how do you see the use of oil to stop or to avoid the infection? Like hair oil, people may use on the scalp, even on the hands and on the foot. People
Uh,
previously they
yeah,
used to put oils. Yeah.
yeah, but there are no as such published reports with just oil inhibiting dermatophytes. If you remember, I was talking about Malassezia group, which can also cause dandruff. That particular species is actually a lipophilic fungi, which means it needs oil to grow. So applying oil to the hair can in turn promote the growth of Malassezia species and help you um, because it can help the organism to produce dandruff in your body. So that is also there. So so it is unless you have other substances, because there are reports that neem could be beneficial. Some plant products like neem can be beneficial in fighting dermatophytosis infection. So if it is a medicinal oil like with the herbs which have antifungal or antibacterial ingredients in it, can be from plant origin also, then it is okay. But a plain oil may not be stopping the fungal growth.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
Dr. Gokul. We have one more question, few more questions in chat box from
Yep.
Arpita. In which season people are more prone to get the fungal infection? Winter, spring, or summer?
Summer, especially because of the sweating, because I told you profuse sweating is one of the reasons. And with the tight fitting clothes and profuse sweating, and then it can be very common. So that's a summer is more prone. But say some parts, if you can see, like when we discussed, I told about dermatophytosis being prevalent among two states, especially Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, what you see is like you don't have a specific winter and all. What we usually have is a hot summer, a hotter summer, and a hotter summer. That's what we call it there. So yeah, so that may be the optimum climate for these fungi.
Okay, so we have one more question from Valli. Any side effects of antifungal creams?
Of course, like if these antifungal creams are just um, antifungal ingredients in it, If it is supervised, then it may not have a steroid. Like the long-time steroid therapy is not good because it's going to reduce your immune system. So long-time steroid therapy or a self-medication is not warranted. Like you need to be supervised by a physician or a dermatologist to go in for an antifungal treatment if it's a topical cream. But if it's an oral antifungal agent, then definitely they have side effects. Like what we are trying to address is when we use an antimicrobial, we are targeting a prokaryote inside a eukaryote, inside a human being. But when you are targeting a fungi, you are targeting a eukaryote inside a eukaryote. So which means like there will be definite side effects on the human body as well, because some of these antifungals can interact with the human cells. Yeah.
Thank you. There is another question from Naveen. Which one is better, oral medication or else the topical application of ointment or any creams?
Yeah, most of the fungal infections, like except for the nail infections, which I talked about, the nail infections, you may have to take in oral antifungals. But other infections, if they are mild or they started initially, a topical antifungal cream will suffice. But if there are recurrent infections and or resistant infections to a regular treatment regimen, then the doctor may go in for a oral antifungal agent.
Another question from Naveen, sir. Is there any natural defense mechanism against this fungal infection?
Natural defense mechanism is like the basically you need to understand they are going to exist only on the superficial layers. They are on the skin, on the hair, on the nails, where there is not much involvement of your immune system. Basically, they do not go deeper into your body to get a natural immunity against this infection. They are going to be there in the superficial layers. But a healthy food lifestyle and all that, and then what I told you is certain precautions, like an aberrated skin because of dryness of skin can be a source for the fungal spore to enter into your body. So like those things, like if you keep your skin healthy and then we follow the precautions, and then it should be fine. Yeah, we will be able to avoid the dermatophyte infection. First thing is, like when you get an infection, we need to be able to identify that it's a dermatophyte infection, so that we can also avoid spreading infection from one part of the body to the other part and also to others in the family.
There is another question from Rupa, sir. Are there any reports on garlic as an antifungal agent?
There are reports, like for that matter, like if you talk about phytochemicals, all the plants in the world, they have some antimicrobial activity. Okay, so it is only the matter of at what concentration, whether it is at 1 mg or 10 mg or 100 mg or 1000 mg, all plants have some antimicrobial activity. But when it comes to commercial applications, what we need is something which is documented, not just as a study, but it has also go through some clinical study. Okay, and then we need an evidence-based medicine to go in to take this particular plant ingredient to treatment. So as of now, we don't have anything which is as something which is as an evidence-based drug based on garlic to treat fungi. That's not there.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from Professor Prakash Halami, CFTRI. Any biological control methods for treating this fungal infection?
Biological control is like actually these are fungi which are basically in the environment, in the animals, and this thing. So like say for example, if it's going to be a pet which is hosting this infection, you use a proper antifungal uh, shampoo for the pet, then it's getting killed. Again, as I told you, like the best thing is like you're drying your clothes in hot sand, or in putting it in a dryer with a higher temperature. It's going to kill the spores. So these are the simple ways where you can avoid the fungi. But as such, I don't see any biological agents here, because these fungi, they are varying ecological niche because they can live on animals, they can live on human beings, they can live on soil also. So when they live in soil, they also have the competition by other fungi which feed on keratin, but they still survive. So I don't think there is any biological agent which is available as of now for treatment of this.
Sir, how is severe problem is with reference to AMR in the fungi, this dermatophyte fungi, because we use mostly the cream antifungal cream.
Yeah.
That must be inducing a lot of resistance. What is your opinion in general?
Yeah. Actually, that's what like the recent reports have been that whatever has been used traditionally, say for example, those days like we have been using azoles like cotrimazole, which is one of the most common thing, and I also reported in the talk that terbinafine is one of the antifungal which is commonly used for dermatophyte infection. But now what we see is a lot of resistance for terbinafine, and we also find that these days the topical antifungal treatment is more effective in ibuprofen or ceftriaxone, which are newer generation antifungals when compared to the traditional cotrimazole.
And I believe
there is a definite development of antifungal resistance. Yes.
Yeah, one small clarification with reference to the infection is concerned. I
Yes,
think it could be a mixed infection also several times, right? The bacterial as well as the worms also maybe there in the wounds, the itching which we get. Besides
as such, these infections do not cause wounds, sir. So if you are talking about wound infections, then they are more bacterial. Like if it's a wound, then it's more a bacterial infection. What these lesions occur is more a scaly lesion. It's more itchy in nature.
Exactly, yes.
But it doesn't become a wound unless you scratch it too much. Then it doesn't become a wound. And possible, like when it becomes a wound, then there is always a chance that it can be a polymicrobial infection where it may also involve the bacteria.
Exactly, and as you rightly pointed out that most of the time people consider it is due to worms, right?
Correct.
Yes, but that the ring formation, which is actually in a rural area, they consider it is mostly the worm type of infection.
Correct.
Which will be usually in the bottom of this lake.
Correct.
That is very exactly. What type of work you do with relation to dermatophytes?
My PhD work was on dermatophytes as well. So like I was initially when I started, I actually did a evolutionary analysis, like how this evolution happened and all that. So I've done a lot of studies on the soil interactions of dermatophytes with other fungi and all that. Then also on the antifungal aspects of dermatophytes, and also some of the molecular studies.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is another question from Unnati. In spite of using topical cotrimazole derivatives for 3 months, if that is not working, what could be done? Like what change could be done?
Yeah, one thing which I told you, like when we talk about the application of a topical agent, what we need to remember is the rule of two. I told you 3 things are important. You have to apply the cream twice a day, okay, and then 2 centimeters away from the lesion, on the lesion and away from the lesion. That's the second part. Third is like if your treatment with the treatment in 2 weeks time, if your lesion resolves but you still continue for 2 more weeks, that's the third rule. So if you have followed all these 3 but still your antifungal cream doesn't work, then we have to better go in for a antifungal susceptibility testing. You need to first isolate the fungi to see what kind of fungi is that, whether it is Phagocyton rubrum or Mentagrophytes. Then we need to go in for the antifungal resistance study. Then you will have a better understanding of what are we targeting and whether we are on the right drug regimen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gopal, for delivering a very clear and lucid presentation. It was the best of best presentation and very clear, and you have cleared all the doubts, and you have taken your valuable time and spent with us, and you have given much clarity on dermatophytes. We thank you very much, and expecting you for more and more delivery of your lectures in upcoming sessions. Thank you so much. Audience, if you have any doubts, could you please ask him by raising your hands or put it in chat box. Shall we end up, Dr. Gopal?
Yeah. That's fantastic. And thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always great to be associated with the MBSI and then in the talk series. I've done 3-4 talks earlier also, like with the MBSI. So it's always sharing is it's a good experience with MBSI.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And then
we are
thanks
much
for the
privileged to have your talk.
participation by all the delegates, and I thank all the professors and doctors who joined today. And
thank you, sir. Thank you.
I thank all the professors, research scholars, and students for attending this session. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Have a good day to all.
Thank you. Have a nice Sunday.
Thank you.